What if I told you that the Lebanese might be the original inhabitants of the Levant? Imagine a land where ancient civilizations rose, flourished, and left behind mysteries that still echo today. The Levant, a historic crossroads of trade, culture, and empires, holds secrets about humanity's origins and identity. Could the Lebanese, descendants of the legendary Phoenicians, be the true heirs of this ancient cradle of civilization? Or is their story one of survival and adaptation through waves of migration and conquest? Stay with us as we dive into a fascinating journey of genetics, archaeology, and history to uncover the truth about the Lebanese and their enduring connection to one of the most ancient and storied regions of the world. First, before we delve deeper, let's address an important question. Who are the Lebanese? The Lebanese are the people of Lebanon, a country in the eastern Mediterranean region with a rich and diverse history shaped by its unique geographical position at the crossroads of Asia, Europe, and Africa. The identity of the Lebanese is complex, reflecting centuries of cultural, religious, and ethnic influences. With this understanding, let's now delve into the historical and genetic roots of the Lebanese. The Levant, a region of profound historical and cultural significance, was originally inhabited by various ancient peoples, including the Canaanites, Amorites, and Phoenicians. These groups, thriving thousands of years ago, laid the foundation for the rich civilizations that flourished in the area. Among them, the Phoenicians stand out as renowned maritime traders and skilled artisans, spreading their influence across the Mediterranean. Modern Lebanese people are believed to have significant genetic and cultural ties to these ancient inhabitants. Despite centuries of invasions, migrations, and conquests, such as by the Assyrians, Greeks, Romans, Arabs, and Ottomans, the legacy of the ancient Levantines persists in Lebanese traditions, language influences, and even DNA, preserving a remarkable connection to the past. The Lebanese people are often associated with the ancient Canaanites and Phoenicians, and historical evidence supports a deep connection. The Canaanites, who lived in the Levant thousands of years ago, were among the first to inhabit the region, evolving into the Phoenicians, famous for their seafaring and trade. Modern genetic studies reveal that Lebanese populations share significant DNA with these ancient civilizations, suggesting a direct lineage despite centuries of foreign invasions and cultural shifts. While the Phoenicians are remembered for spreading their alphabet and founding cities like Tyre and Sidon, their heritage lives on in Lebanese traditions, local dialects, and even culinary influences, forming a living bridge between the ancient and modern identities of the region. Studies show remarkable genetic continuity between ancient Levantine populations and modern Lebanese people, demonstrating a deep-rooted connection across millennia. Research using DNA from ancient burial sites in the region reveals that the genetic makeup of the Canaanites and Phoenicians closely resembles that of today's Lebanese. Despite numerous invasions and migrations, including Greeks, Romans, Arabs, and Ottomans, the core genetic identity of the population remained largely intact. This continuity suggests that while cultures, languages, and rulers changed over time, the people of the region retained a strong ancestral link to their ancient roots. This enduring heritage is evident in Lebanese traditions, local customs, and familial ties, providing a living testament to their connection with history. The prehistoric inhabitants of the Levant played a vital role in shaping the genetic identity of the Lebanese people. Long before recorded history, ancient communities settled in the region, thriving as early farmers and hunters. These populations formed the genetic backbone of later civilizations like the Canaanites and Phoenicians, whose legacies are deeply tied to modern Lebanon. Archaeological and genetic studies confirm that the DNA of these early inhabitants remains a significant part of Lebanese ancestry, despite centuries of external influences. Their contributions are not just genetic, but also cultural, as their innovations in agriculture, trade, and settlement patterns laid the groundwork for the flourishing societies that followed, leaving an enduring imprint on the region's identity. Archaeological discoveries provide strong evidence linking Lebanese ancestry to ancient populations of the Levant. Excavations in cities like Byblos, Sidon, and Tyre have uncovered artifacts, inscriptions, and burial sites dating back thousands of years to the Canaanite and Phoenician periods. These findings include intricately designed pottery, tools, and jewelry that reflect a thriving civilization deeply rooted in the region. DNA analysis of human remains from ancient Levantine burial sites has further confirmed genetic continuity between these early inhabitants and modern Lebanese people. Historical records from neighboring civilizations, such as Egypt and Mesopotamia, also reference the people of this area, highlighting their trade, cultural influence, and enduring presence in the region across centuries of change. Migrations and conquests have added layers to the genetic makeup of the Lebanese while preserving their deep connection to ancient Levantine roots. Over centuries, the region saw waves of influence from Egyptians, Assyrians, Persians, Greeks, Romans, Arabs, Crusaders, and Ottomans. Each brought cultural and genetic contributions, leaving subtle marks on the population. Despite this, studies reveal that the core ancestry of the Lebanese remains strongly tied to the Canaanites and Phoenicians, showing remarkable continuity. The genetic impact of these external groups was relatively small, blending into the foundation established by the original inhabitants. This mixture reflects Lebanon's history as a crossroads of civilizations, where ancient identity endured while adapting to the influences of an ever-changing world. The Phoenicians played a significant role in shaping the genetic diversity of the Levant, not just through their presence but also through their extensive maritime trade and cultural influence. As skilled sailors and traders, they established colonies across the Mediterranean, from Carthage to southern Spain, creating connections between diverse populations. This movement facilitated the exchange of ideas, goods, and genes, enriching the genetic makeup of the Levant. Despite their wide-ranging travels, studies reveal that the Phoenicians themselves maintained strong ties to their homeland, with their core genetic identity closely aligned with earlier Canaanite populations. Their influence on the Levant's diversity is seen as both an expansion of local heritage and a blend with distant cultures, forming a unique legacy. Historical events like the Islamic conquests and the Crusades introduced new influences to the genetic heritage of the Lebanese, but their core ancestry remained remarkably stable. The Islamic conquests brought Arab populations into the Levant, blending with the existing communities and introducing cultural and linguistic shifts. The Crusades, on the other hand, brought European settlers and soldiers, leaving traces of Western genetic influence in certain areas. Despite these events, genetic studies show that the Lebanese people have retained a strong link to their ancient Canaanite and Phoenician roots. While these historical interactions added diversity, they did not overwrite the foundational identity of the population, reflecting Lebanon's ability to absorb change while preserving its deep ancestral legacy. The Ottoman Empire and other foreign powers contributed to Lebanon's genetic pool by introducing new populations and fostering intermixing over centuries of rule. The Ottomans, who governed the region for nearly 400 years, brought people from across their vast empire, including Turks, Kurds, Armenians, and others, who settled in Lebanon and blended with the local population. Earlier influences from powers like the Persians, Romans, and Greeks had already left subtle marks on the genetic makeup of the Lebanese. However, despite these contributions, studies show that the genetic identity of the Lebanese remained predominantly linked to their ancient Levantine ancestors. These foreign influences added diversity to the population, enriching its heritage while preserving the deep continuity of its roots. Lebanon's strategic location on ancient trade routes had a profound impact on its genetic diversity, turning it into a melting pot of cultures and peoples. As a hub for trade between Asia, Africa, and Europe, the region attracted merchants, settlers, and travelers from various civilizations, including Egyptians, Mesopotamians, Greeks, Romans, and Arabs. These interactions brought not only goods, but also the exchange of ideas and intermarriage, leaving subtle genetic imprints over generations. The Phoenicians, Lebanon's ancient seafarers, played a key role by establishing far-reaching connections across the Mediterranean. Despite this influx of external influences, genetic studies reveal that the Lebanese have retained strong ties to their ancient Levantine ancestors, blending external diversity with a deeply rooted identity. Genetically, the Lebanese share significant similarities with other Levantine populations, such as Syrians, Palestinians, and Jordanians, reflecting a common ancient ancestry rooted in the Canaanites and early inhabitants of the region. However, slight differences have emerged over time due to unique historical influences and varying degrees of external interactions. For instance, the Lebanese show a particularly strong genetic continuity with their Phoenician ancestors, who were concentrated in the coastal areas of modern-day Lebanon. While populations in Syria and Palestine also reflect Levantine roots, they display greater genetic influence from Arab migrations due to different historical dynamics. Overall, these populations form a connected genetic tapestry, shaped by shared heritage, yet marked by the distinct histories of their respective regions. Lebanese people are not entirely distinct, but do exhibit unique genetic characteristics compared to other Middle Eastern populations. Studies show that while they share a common ancestry with neighboring groups such as Syrians, Palestinians, and Jordanians, the Lebanese have a particularly strong genetic connection to the ancient Canaanites and Phoenicians. This continuity reflects their deep roots in the Levant, despite historical migrations and invasions. Unlike populations in the broader Middle East, which have experienced more substantial Arab or Central Asian influences over time, the Lebanese maintain a genetic profile that closely mirrors the region's ancient inhabitants. This blend of shared heritage and localized continuity gives the Lebanese a unique place in the genetic and cultural history of the Middle East. Lebanese Christians, Muslims, and Druze share largely the same genetic origins, reflecting their deep ancestral ties to the ancient inhabitants of the Levant, including the Canaanites and Phoenicians. Despite differences in religious practices and historical affiliations, genetic studies show that these groups are remarkably similar, with minimal variation between them. This shared ancestry highlights a common foundation that predates the introduction of Christianity. Islam, or the Druze faith to the region. Differences that exist are often cultural or historical, rather than genetic, stemming from later influences like Arab conquests or sect-specific migrations. Ultimately, the genetic continuity across these communities underscores their shared roots and long-standing connection to the land and history of Lebanon. The Lebanese diaspora, spread across continents due to trade, migration, and conflict, has played a role in influencing the genetic diversity of Lebanon through intermarriage and occasional returns to the homeland. Over generations, members of the diaspora have mingled with local populations in countries such as Brazil, the United States, Australia, and parts of Africa, introducing new genetic variations into Lebanese family lines. When some of these individuals or their descendants return to Lebanon or maintain ties with their ancestral villages, they contribute fresh genetic inputs to the population. Despite this, the overall genetic identity of Lebanon remains deeply rooted in its ancient Levantine ancestry, with the diaspora serving as an extension of Lebanon's historical role as a bridge between cultures. Genetic research has identified markers that strongly associate with Lebanese ancestry, tying modern populations to the ancient inhabitants of the Levant. These markers are particularly linked to the Canaanites and Phoenicians, whose genetic legacy remains prevalent in Lebanese DNA today. While no single marker exclusively defines Lebanese ancestry, a combination of genetic traits highlights their unique identity within the broader Middle Eastern context. Studies show that these markers have persisted, showcasing remarkable continuity. Comparisons with neighboring populations also reveal subtle distinctions. These genetic traits serve as a living testament to Lebanon's deep-rooted heritage and historical significance. Lebanese genetics provide crucial insights into human migration patterns in the ancient world, highlighting the Levant's role as a vital crossroads of civilizations. This genetic stability suggests that the Levant was not only a cradle of settled civilizations, but also a point of interaction for diverse groups traveling between Asia, Africa, and Europe. The Phoenicians, descendants of the Canaanites, further shaped migration patterns by spreading their influence and genetic markers across the Mediterranean. By tracing these connections, researchers better understand how trade, conquest, and cultural exchange shaped ancient human movements and the genetic tapestry of modern populations. Lebanese genetics show evidence of African, European, and Asian influences, reflecting Lebanon's historical role as a crossroads for trade and migration. Genetic studies reveal subtle contributions from sub-Saharan Africa, likely linked to ancient trade routes and the movement of peoples through Egypt and the Levant. European influences, including markers from Greek and Roman populations, are tied to historical conquests and interactions during the Classical and Crusader periods. Asian genetic traces, particularly from Central and South Asia, may be linked to Persian and later Ottoman rule, as well as Silk Road connections. Despite these influences, the dominant genetic profile of the Lebanese remains deeply rooted in their ancient Levantine ancestors, showcasing a remarkable blend of continuity and diversity. The Phoenician legacy is central to understanding Lebanese genetic origins, as it highlights the deep connection between modern Lebanese populations and their ancient ancestors. Descended from the Canaanites, the Phoenicians were seafaring traders who established colonies and spread their influence across the Mediterranean. Genetic studies confirm that Lebanese DNA retains strong markers linked to the Phoenicians, showcasing a continuity that spans thousands of years. This legacy not only provides insight into the genetic stability of the region, but also underscores Lebanon's historical role as a hub for cultural exchange and innovation. The Phoenicians' impact extends beyond genetics, shaping the identity, history, and heritage of Lebanon as a nation deeply rooted in the ancient world. Genetic studies offer a powerful tool for tracing the history of civilizations in the Levant by providing a direct link to the ancient populations that once inhabited the region. By analyzing DNA from both ancient remains and modern populations, researchers can map out the genetic continuity and shifts that occurred over time. These studies reveal how the early inhabitants, like the Canaanites and Phoenicians, contributed to the genetic foundation of modern Levantine populations, while also showing the influence of later migrations and invasions, such as those by the Egyptians, Romans, Arabs, and Ottomans. Genetic markers help identify patterns of human movement and cultural exchange, filling gaps in historical records and offering a clearer picture of how civilizations in the Levant interacted and evolved over millennia. In conclusion, the genetic history of Lebanon and the broader Levant provides invaluable insights into the region's rich and complex past. Through the lens of modern genetic studies, we can trace a deep connection to ancient civilizations, particularly the Canaanites and Phoenicians, while also recognizing the diverse influences brought by later migrations and conquests. The genetic continuity seen in the Lebanese population serves as a testament to the resilience of their heritage, despite centuries of change. By understanding these genetic markers, we not only uncover the roots of Lebanese identity, but also gain a deeper appreciation for how ancient civilizations shaped the modern world, creating a lasting legacy that endures through time.